I still remember the way she smiled that morning. It wasn't forced or distant like it had been for months. It was warm, almost affectionate. I caught myself staring at her across the kitchen table, wondering if this was some kind of turning point for us. Maybe things were getting better. Maybe we weren't as broken as I thought. Then, as she sipped her coffee, she casually dropped a bomb that would change everything. I want to divorce Wallace. Just like that. No build-up. No warning. She said it as if she were telling me we needed more milk. I blinked at her, waiting for the punchline. None came. She just looked at me, expectantly, as if she had just asked me to pass the salt. I should have felt devastated. I should have panicked, begged, demanded to know why. But instead, I felt relief. A wave of it, so strong it almost made me laugh. I think that's what threw her off the most, the fact that I didn't react the way she expected. Instead of arguing, I took a slow sip of my own coffee, set the mug down, and met her gaze with a calm I didn't know I possessed. Okay. Her lips parted slightly, eyes narrowing just enough for me to notice. She had been prepared for resistance, for me to fall apart, for me to fight for her. And yet, here I was, agreeing like it was the most natural thing in the world. She hesitated. You don't have anything to say? I shrugged. Not really. If that's what you want, then let's do it. She wasn't expecting that. Not at all. And that's when I knew I had the upper hand. The first few minutes after her announcement set the stage for everything that would come next. I could see it in her eyes. She had walked into this conversation thinking she was in control, that she would be the one calling the shots. But she had underestimated me. What she didn't know was that I had been preparing for this moment for months. And by the time she realized what I was doing, it would be far too late. I watched as she processed my reaction. Her fingers tightened around her coffee mug. Her posture stiffened just slightly. She thought she had me cornered, that I'd crumble and beg her to reconsider. But my calm response threw her off. She blinked, then let out a small, nervous laugh. Wow, that was fast. I didn't expect you to just accept it like that. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. This was the same woman who had spent the past year pulling away from me, who had taken longer to reply to my texts, who had started going out more and coming home later. I wasn't stupid. I had my suspicions. But instead of confronting her, I had been playing the long game. Watching. Preparing. And now here we were. Elsa, I don't see the point in dragging something out if you've already made up your mind, I said smoothly, taking another sip of coffee. So let's get started. Do you have a lawyer in mind? Or should I get mine to draft up the papers? There it was. The flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. The moment she realized I wasn't reacting like the heartbroken husband she had pictured in her head. She hesitated. Well, I haven't exactly figured out all the details yet. Liar. She had planned this. Probably for weeks, if not months. The way she said it so casually that morning. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. She expected me to fight, to resist, so she could play the role of the trapped wife who had to convince her reluctant husband to let her go. I wasn't giving her that satisfaction. I stood up, stretching like this was just another regular day. All right then. I'll call my lawyer today and have them send over a draft. No need to drag this out. She gaped at me. Wait, you're really okay with this? I shrugged. What's the alternative? Begging you to stay? No thanks. If you're done, you're done. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I could see the gears turning in her head. This wasn't how the conversation was supposed to go. She expected emotions. A scene. Not this. I walked over to the sink, rinsing out my coffee mug. By the way, I added casually, I assume you'll be moving out soon? Or should I start looking for a new place? Her head snapped up. Wait, I'm moving out. I turned to face her, tilting my head slightly. Well, yeah. I mean, you're the one who wants to start a new life. I figured you already had a plan for where you'd be staying. She opened and closed her mouth, struggling for words. She did have a plan. I knew she did, but now she had to actually say it out loud. Well, she said finally, forcing a smile. I thought we could take things slow. You know, figure things out together first. I almost laughed. She wanted me to play along with whatever fantasy she had in her head, that we'd go through a respectful separation, remain friends, and ease her into her new life. Probably with whoever she had been spending so much time with lately. Not happening. I gave her a neutral expression. I think it's better if we make a clean break. Her smile faltered. Good. I wasn't angry. Not yet. The anger would come later, when I'd let myself fully process everything. But for now, I was enjoying this moment, because for the first time in a long time, I was the one in control. She thought she was the one making the decision, but she was about to find out just how much power I actually had in this situation. And by the time she realized it, it would be too late. I didn't bring it up again. Not that day, not the next. I went about my life as if nothing had changed, and that drove Elsa insane. She kept watching me, waiting for some kind of reaction, but I gave her nothing. No outbursts, no breakdowns, no desperate attempts to win her back. Just quiet acceptance. And that wasn't part of her script. By the third day, she started testing me. At dinner, she sat across from me, swirling her fork around in her plate like she was waiting for the right moment to drop a bomb. So, I was thinking maybe we should go to therapy first, just to make sure we're making the right decision. I glanced up, chewing slowly. Therapy? No? After she had blindsided me with a divorce announcement? She wasn't trying to fix things, she was stalling. I wiped my mouth with a napkin. That's funny. You seemed pretty sure the other day. Her fingers twitched slightly. Well, yeah, but I just want to make sure we're handling this the right way. We have a life together, Wallace. I don't want us to turn into one of those couples that hate each other. There it is. She wanted a clean exit. No guilt, no consequences. She had envisioned herself as the responsible, mature wife who handled the divorce with grace, while I was supposed to be the emotional wreck clinging to what we had. I wasn't playing that role. I leaned back, stretching. I don't think therapy is necessary. You made your decision, right? No need to drag it out. She stared at me, her lips pressing together like she had swallowed something bitter. So that's it? You're just giving up? I gave her a small smile. No, Elsa. You gave up. Silence. She wanted to argue. I could see it in her eyes. But what could she say? That she hadn't actually thought this through? That she expected me to fight for a marriage she was already halfway out the door from? Instead, she pushed back her chair and stood up. I'm going to bed. I watched her go, unbothered. The real fun was just beginning. The secret she didn't think I knew. Over the next week, I started making quiet moves. I withdrew half of our joint savings into a separate account. I met with my lawyer to discuss the best way to divide assets in a way that would benefit me the most. I even started looking at apartments, just in case I decided I didn't want to stay in our house anymore. And all the while, Elsa became restless. She would bring up the divorce in the most casual ways, but every time I agreed or acted indifferent, she seemed annoyed. She wanted me to be the one struggling. She wanted me to be the one second-guessing everything. One night, she came home later than usual. I was already in bed, scrolling through my phone, when she slipped under the covers beside me. I turned my head slightly. Late night? She tensed. Just had some errands to run. Right. Errands. I could smell the lie on her, but I didn't say a word. Because while she thought she was being discreet, she had no idea what I had already uncovered. See, Elsa had been planning this for a while. I had my suspicions, but now I had proof. It was the small things that tipped me off, the extra time she spent on her phone, the random disappearances on weekends. But the biggest clue? The way she had gotten too comfortable around me. She didn't even try to hide her boredom when we spent time together anymore. That only happens when someone thinks they already have one foot out the door. So, I started digging. Not in an obsessive way, but carefully. I checked her old laptop, the one she assumed I never touched. And there it was. An email, sitting in her drafts, never sent. I can't wait until it's just us. Wallace won't fight it. He's too passive. He thinks I'm just figuring things out, but I'm already done. Once the money is settled, we can finally be together. I stared at the screen for a long time, my chest tightening, not with sadness, but with something else. Satisfaction. I wasn't going to expose her. Not yet. No, I was going to let her think she was still in control. Because what she didn't realize was that I had already flipped the entire game in my favor. And in just a few days, she was going to regret ever thinking she could outsmart me. The more I observed Elsa, the more obvious it became she wasn't just preparing to leave me. She was preparing to secure her new life. The late nights, the forced conversations, the sudden interest in self-discovery all pointed to one thing: she had someone waiting for her on the other side of this divorce. But she was playing it safe, making sure she walked away with as much as she could before officially cutting me loose. I wasn't going to stop her. I was going to let her think she had one. So, I played the role of the calm, indifferent husband. I didn't push, I didn't accuse, I didn't even question the absurdity of her errands. If she wanted to believe I was passive, then I'd be the most passive man she had ever met. Meanwhile, I was 3 steps ahead, setting up the perfect storm. I started slowly shifting things behind the scenes. First, I went to the bank and removed my name from certain joint accounts, strategically moving my money where she couldn't access it. Then, I started liquidating assets she had assumed would be part of her future plans, cashing out investments, selling off small pieces of property she had barely paid attention to. I even let my lawyer take the lead on filing first. The moment Elsa got served the papers, I saw it in her face. A flicker of panic, just for a second. Then, she forced a smile. "Well, you really wasted no time, huh?" I shrugged. Like I said, no point in dragging it out. Her fingers tightened around the papers. She was trying to figure out where she had lost control. This was supposed to be her decision on her timeline. I wasn't supposed to take initiative. I wasn't supposed to beat her to it. For the next few days, her attitude shifted. The confidence she had carried before, the almost smug way she talked about moving forward, started to crack. She hovered around me more, making small talk, even offering to cook dinner like she used to. I let her feel like she had a chance to slow things down, to regain whatever power she thought she had. Then I dropped the first bomb. I casually mentioned that I had already found a new apartment. She looked up from her phone, caught off guard. "Wait, you're moving out?" "Yeah," I said, keeping my tone light. "No point in staying here longer than necessary." She blinked. "But don't you think we should figure out the logistics first? I mean, we still have time to sort things out." I smirked. "Actually, no. I think it's better this way. Quick and clean." Her expression darkened just slightly. She wasn't expecting me to detach so easily. She had counted on me being the reluctant one, the one who needed time. But I was making it too easy, and that unsettled her. Then came the second bomb. That weekend, I left early in the morning and didn't come back until late at night. When I walked through the door, she was waiting for me in the kitchen, arms crossed. "Where were you?" I raised an eyebrow. Didn't realize I needed to check in. She hesitated, clearly not expecting that answer. "I just thought." "I mean, you didn't mention you were going anywhere." I set my keys down on the counter. "You don't tell me where you go either." The silence between us stretched. She hated that. She wanted to ask, to demand answers, but she had backed herself into a corner. If she questioned me, I'd have every right to question her. And she wasn't ready for that conversation. For the first time in a long time, I saw something in her that I hadn't seen before: uncertainty. She had thought she could control how this ended, that she could dictate the pace, the emotions, the outcome. But I had rewritten the script, and now she was struggling to keep up. And the best part? She had no idea just how much worse it was going to get. A strange shift began to happen in our house after that night. Elsa had gone from being distant and checked out to suddenly present. She lingered in the kitchen when I made coffee in the morning, asked casual questions about my day, even made excuses to sit near me on the couch in the evening. It was almost laughable. She wasn't trying to reconnect. No, that wasn't it at all. She was trying to regain control. See, when she had first brought up the divorce, she had all the power. In her mind, she was the one making the choice, the one who held the cards. But when I reacted differently than she had expected, when I moved quickly, when I didn't fight or beg, she lost her grip on the situation. Now, she was scrambling to understand why. I let her think whatever she wanted. One evening, she walked into the living room while I was going through some paperwork, casually leaning against the doorframe. "You're really serious about this, huh?" she asked, her tone light but cautious. I didn't even look up. "You're the one who wanted this, Elsa." She hesitated. "Yeah, but I don't know. I thought we'd talk about things more before rushing into all these decisions." I finally met her gaze, my expression unreadable. "You had plenty of time to talk before you decided we were done." A flicker of something crossed her face. Guilt? Annoyance? I wasn't sure. But she quickly masked it with a forced chuckle. "I guess I just didn't expect you to be so efficient about it." Efficient? That was her polite way of saying I didn't expect you to be the one pulling the rug out from under me. I shrugged. Like I said before, no point in dragging it out. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "So, have you told anyone yet?" There it was. She wasn't asking out of curiosity. She was asking because she wanted to control the narrative. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers against the table. "A few people." Her lips parted slightly. "Like who?" "My lawyer. A couple of friends." I paused, watching her closely. "Your mom." That made her stiffen. "You told my mom?" I tilted my head. Why wouldn't I? She deserved to hear it from me, don't you think? Elsa's expression faltered. I could see the conflict behind her eyes. She wanted to be mad, to accuse me of overstepping, but she couldn't. She had started this. She had expected to be the one to break the news to everyone, to control how people saw the situation. But now, I had beaten her to it. Her mother had not been pleased. Not with me, oh no. With her. The phone call had been brutal. Elsa, what the hell are you thinking? Her mother had demanded. Wallace has been nothing but good to you. Is there someone else? Elsa had tried to brush it off, but her mother wasn't stupid. And now, she was backed into a corner. She forced a weak smile. I just didn't want people to get the wrong idea. I smirked. What idea would that be? She opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no idea what I had told them, and that was eating her alive. The next few days were fascinating to watch. She was restless, constantly checking her phone, probably waiting for the fallout. The friends we had spoken to weren't giving her the reaction she had hoped for. Instead of sympathy, she was met with skepticism. I had been careful about my words, never outright accusing her of anything, but I had planted seeds, enough to make people wonder. And just when she thought she was regaining some stability, I dropped the biggest bomb yet. One evening, as we sat across from each other at the dinner table, an awkward, tension-filled silence stretching between us, I casually cleared my throat. Oh, by the way, I wanted to give you a heads up. She looked up, fork hovering over her plate. About what? I leaned back, stretching my arms. I'll be gone for the weekend. Just figured you should know. Her brows furrowed. Gone? Where? I smiled. Just taking a trip. Her fork clinked against her plate. A trip? I nodded. Yeah, figured I'd get away for a bit. Clear my head. She forced a laugh. That's sudden. You never take random trips. I shrugged. New chapter, new habits. Her fingers tightened around her glass. You're not, like, going with someone, are you? I raised an eyebrow. Does it matter? That question alone made her entire posture stiffen. I could see the jealousy, the fear, the sudden realization that maybe, just maybe, I was the one who was moving on faster than she was. I didn't answer her. I didn't owe her one. I just finished my dinner, stood up, and walked away, leaving her sitting there, stewing in her own thoughts. She had expected this divorce to be her victory. But instead, she was starting to realize she had already lost. The morning I left for my trip, Elsa was awake earlier than usual. I could hear her in the kitchen, moving around more than necessary, her movements sharp and deliberate. She wanted me to know she was there. She wanted me to acknowledge her. But I didn't. I packed my bag in silence, showered, dressed, and walked down the stairs like I had somewhere better to be, which, for the first time in years, I actually did. When I stepped into the kitchen, she was standing by the counter, mug in hand, pretending to be casual. You're really going, huh? I grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl, tossed it in the air, and caught it. Yep. She tilted her head, studying me. You never said where. I smirked. Didn't realize I had to. Her fingers tightened around the mug. It's just sudden. I took a slow bite of the apple, chewing thoughtfully before responding. So was your divorce announcement. That hit hard. She flinched, just slightly, but quickly covered it up with a forced laugh. Right. Well, have fun, I guess. She was waiting for me to say something else. To slip. To explain myself. But I didn't. I just grabbed my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked toward the door. Right before I stepped out, I turned slightly. Oh, and Elsa? She looked up, eyes wide with anticipation. Don't wait up. I shut the door before she could respond. The drive was smooth, but my mind was anything but. I had spent years inside that house, inside her world, making myself smaller to accommodate her needs, her shifting moods, her expectations. But today, for the first time, I was free. I didn't go far, just a few towns over. Enough distance to make it clear I was doing this for me, not running away, not hiding. I checked into a quiet lakeside cabin, nothing fancy, just peaceful. I turned off my phone and spent the entire afternoon doing nothing. Just sitting by the water, breathing in the cold, crisp air, feeling lighter than I had in years. By the time I turned my phone back on that evening, there were 6 missed calls. All from Elsa. I stared at the screen, smirking. She was spiraling. I let her stew in it. The texts followed soon after. Elsa, hey, just checking in. Where are you? Elsa, are you ignoring me? Elsa, Wallace, this is childish. Elsa, just tell me where you are. Then, the last one. Elsa, who are you with? There it was. The insecurity she had tried so hard to hide. She wanted to believe she had me figured out, that I was the predictable one. But now that I was acting differently, moving differently, she was scrambling to understand why. I didn't reply. Instead, I let the silence speak for itself. That night, I went out to a quiet bar, ordered a drink, and just observed. People laughed, talked, lived their lives. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't just Wallace, her husband. I was just me. And I liked it. The bartender, a woman around my age with tired eyes but a warm smile, slid another drink my way. Rough day. I chuckled, shaking my head. You have no idea. She leaned on the counter. Let me guess. Woman trouble. I smirked. More like woman freedom. She laughed, clinking her glass against mine. Well, here's to that. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of control I hadn't known I was missing. And back home, Elsa was probably pacing the floor, realizing that for the first time, she was the one being left in the dark. The tables had turned, and I wasn't done yet. The moment I walked back into the house Sunday evening, I knew something was different. The air felt thicker, charged with something unspoken. Elsa was sitting on the couch, her back stiff, her hands curled into the fabric of her leggings as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. The television was on, but the volume was low, almost as if she wanted it to seem like she had been casually relaxing, except for the fact that her eyes were locked on me before I even shut the door. I tossed my bag onto the floor, taking my time as I slipped off my shoes. I could feel her stare burning into me. I didn't speak first. I wasn't going to. Finally, she exhaled sharply, the tension snapping like an overstretched rubber band. So, she said, her voice carefully controlled, "How was your little trip?" I smirked. Refreshing. She narrowed her eyes, waiting for me to elaborate. I didn't. Instead, I stretched my arms, letting out a satisfied sigh before heading toward the kitchen. I heard her shift on the couch, the creak of the leather as she turned to follow me with her gaze. You didn't answer any of my calls, she said, her voice taking on an edge. I grabbed a glass from the cabinet, filling it with water before turning back to her. Didn't feel like talking. Her lips parted slightly, like she wasn't sure if she had just heard me correctly. You didn't feel like talking? I took a slow sip, watching her over the rim of the glass. That's what I said. For a moment, she just sat there, blinking. I could almost see her mind racing, trying to figure out what angle to take. You could have at least let me know you got there safely, she finally said, trying a different approach. I was worried. I chuckled, shaking my head. Were you? She frowned. Of course, I was. I set my glass down on the counter. That's interesting, considering you didn't seem all that concerned about me when you decided to end our marriage. She inhaled sharply, like she had been slapped. That's not fair. I raised an eyebrow. Isn't it? Her hands curled into fists on her lap. I didn't think we were going to turn into this, Wallace. I thought we could be mature about this whole thing. I let out a short laugh. Mature? Elsa, you blindsided me with a divorce, acted like it was just a casual decision, and expected me to follow your lead like some obedient puppy. And now, because I don't need you to guide me through my own damn life, you're mad. She opened her mouth, then shut it again, her jaw clenching. She hated this. Hated that I wasn't reacting the way she had imagined. Hated that I wasn't giving her the drama she had probably played out in her head. I leaned against the counter, folding my arms. Be honest, Elsa. This isn't about the trip. This isn't about me not answering my phone. You're just pissed because you realized you're not the one in control anymore. Her nostrils flared slightly. That's not true. I smirked. No. She stood up abruptly, crossing her arms over her chest. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. I don't understand what's going on with you. It's like you flipped a switch overnight. I shrugged. Maybe I just finally woke up. For a moment, we just stood there, staring at each other. A standoff. A silent battle of wills. Then, something unexpected happened. Her eyes softened. Her shoulders dropped just slightly. And when she spoke again, her voice was quieter, almost hesitant. Wallace. I never wanted this to be ugly. I studied her, searching for any sign of manipulation. But there was something genuine in her expression now, something I hadn't seen in a long time. Doubt. Good. I pushed off the counter, grabbing my bag from the floor. I'm gonna take a shower. I didn't wait for her response. I walked past her, feeling her eyes on me the entire way up the stairs. She had finally started to realize what I had known for weeks. She had made a mistake. And soon, she was going to regret it more than she ever thought possible. The house felt different now. It wasn't just Elsa's presence that had changed, it was mine. The way I moved, the way I no longer filled the space with hesitation, the way I stopped waiting for her approval. And she felt it, too. I can see it in the way she watched me, in the way she lingered just a little too long when passing me in the hallway, in the way she kept trying to pull me back into conversations that didn't need to happen. But the biggest change? She no longer seemed so sure of herself. A week had passed since my trip, and in that time, I had continued moving forward without her. I had found a new apartment, I had met with my lawyer, and I had finalized my plans. I was leaving, and I wasn't looking back. The more certain I became, the more Elsa's confidence cracked. It started small, her offering to cook dinner, despite barely doing that for the last year. Then it was little conversations, her trying to reminisce about old memories, as if bringing up happy times could erase everything else. But the real shift happened the night before I was set to leave. I had packed up most of my things. The house looked emptier, colder. I was sitting on the couch, going through a few last-minute documents when she sat down beside me. Close. Too close. I didn't acknowledge her right away. I wanted to see how long it would take for her to say something. Finally, after what felt like forever, she inhaled sharply. Wallace. I glanced at her. Yeah. She hesitated, her fingers curling into the fabric of her jeans. Are you sure about this? I set my papers down. About what? Her eyes flickered across my face, searching for something. About leaving. I exhaled slowly, leaning back against the couch. You wanted this, Elsa. She swallowed. I thought I did. I tilted my head slightly, watching her. And now? She dropped her gaze, staring at her hands. Now? I don't know. Silence filled the space between us. I could hear the clock ticking in the background, the soft hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Then she spoke again, her voice quieter this time. I thought being free would make me happy. I thought, maybe I was missing something. But the past few weeks have made me realize something else. I waited. She looked up at me, eyes full of something raw. I didn't appreciate what I had. For a moment, I just studied her. The old me would have jumped at those words, would have grabbed onto them like a lifeline, like proof that she did still love me, that we could fix this. But the man sitting here now? He wasn't the same. I smiled softly. Not bitter. Not cruel. Just understanding. I think you're realizing that too late. Her eyes glistened, but she quickly blinked it away. Yeah, she whispered. I reached over, gently patting her hand before standing up. I hope you find what you're looking for, Elsa. I really do. And with that, I walked away. The next morning, I packed the last of my things, loaded them into my car, and didn't look back. No dramatic farewell, no final confrontation. Just a quiet exit. As I pulled away from the house, the weight on my shoulders lifted. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't broken. I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I was truly happy.